In our culture, therapists and healers of one form or another are the only recourse for the many abuses, traumas, and diseases that our culture passes down from generation to generation. The abuses from government to citizen, from boss to employee, from husband to wife, from wife to husband, the abuses from parents to children, from siblings to siblings, from bullies to sensitive children in school, sexual abuse, financial abuse, corruption, abuse of power, etc. The plethora of abuses that our cult stands ready to deliver have one recourse. Our cult will abuse you in this way, in this way, in this way, in this way. Our cult will not stand up for you in this way, this way, and this way. And once you've been knocked down, you must come up with additional resources in time, focus, and money to go to the healer, to the therapist. So it's up to you, the one who's been knocked flat in your face, to find more time than the average person, more money than the average person, and more effort than the average person, so that a therapist can have a more comfortable life, so that the therapist's life can be improved. Now, whether or not the client's life improves or doesn't, and after $150,000 of various therapies with more than 40 practitioners, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Timothy Leary did a study on psychotherapy during his time at Harvard and found that a third of the people improved, a third of the people stayed the same, and a third of the people got worse in both groups, both the psychotherapeutic group and the control group. He couldn't tell the difference statistically between the group that didn't pay for therapy and the group that did. Obviously, the group that paid for therapy were a lot poorer in time, money, and effort than the group that did not. But in all cases, the therapists were richer. They didn't have to take time off work to do therapy for someone else. That was their work to be paid, whether or not their work improved, led to a status quo, or led to a deterioration in the client. And there have been noticeable times and patterns where doing work with someone has led to worse results. This doesn't lead to a bonhomie of cheerful gratitude to therapists. I'm very grateful for the times that it worked. I question the intelligence of a culture knocking people flat on their face, and when they can least afford it, asking them to come up with more than everyone else to fix the damage caused by an abuse cult by people who cannot competently and ethically be depended on to do their job in a way that benefits the client not only over a neutral point, but benefits the client enough to be worth the time off work, the drive and gasoline spewed into the atmosphere, the money that could have gone towards a retirement fund that could justify the work in real terms, overdoing anything else with that time and money. Well, in that context, particularly after a stunning surprise, I was sexually abused by my high facilitator and therapist, Peter Sandhill, in the context of the Human Awareness Institute, which created trauma and dissociation. When I brought that to the high facilitators for attention and healing, they disowned the issue and said, no, this has nothing to do with us. We may have trained this man. We may have chosen this man. We may have recommended him to you without disclosing that he doesn't have a license or giving any caveat for his limitations. And yes, on our recommendation, you may have paid him, and yes, you are our client, and you chose to be Peter's client. But the fact that we have a mission statement that says we're committed to the whole world winning doesn't include healing you from the sexual abuse that occurred because you trusted us and took our advice. Well, this turned trauma into PTSD. The betrayal of the entire facilitator body, a public nonprofit, my friends and community, the betrayal in lies, in abandonment, in shame, and in an underlying message of worthlessness as pain mounted, led me into terrain that I could not navigate. That's when a stranger in a cafe told me about trauma. I'd heard the name, of course, and I knew that if I went to war and was blown up by a grenade, I'd have to get help for trauma. I didn't know that abusive parents, that abusive therapists could induce the same kind of trauma, nor that abandonment and betrayal could turn that trauma into PTSD, nor what the symptoms of PTSD were, nor what to do about it. I had to learn that from a stranger in a cafe. I was not happy. I felt betrayed by every one of 40 healers and therapists. Not the least of which is, of course, the person who charged me money to sexually abuse me. Now, this reveals a stunning level of incompetence. The fact that I could demonstrate traumatic symptoms with 40 healers and therapists without any of them recommending that I read a trauma book, without any of them doing an intake form to understand and diagnose the childhood trauma and abuse, and to reenact that abuse for money and call it love is a staggering level of incompetence. Now, one would think that if one joined a field to help heal human beings from these kinds of issues, that one would jump at the chance to share one's knowledge with people, etc., and break some of the tyranny of shame that comes when you charge people to get incompetent help for something that was not their fault to begin with. The therapeutic community has run like hell from this dynamic. They do not want to be on camera. They do not want to talk. They do not want to discuss data and statistics. It is a staggering level of willful ignorance and silence. Just the kind of thing you need if you're trying to learn healthy relationships right. So this was a third betrayal. Not only is this group of individuals largely unethical and incompetent, induced by an unethical and incompetent culture, because the culture says, we're going to abuse you, now you go and get help to pay to fix our abuse, and the therapists go along with that and say, fine, we'll take the money to fix them, whether they get fixed or not. It's a little bit of a racket. The more people the culture abuses, the more money the therapists make. So the confidentiality clause, don't worry, your secret is safe with me. Whose secret are we really talking about? Do I want it kept secret that my parents abused me and didn't know what they were doing? Do I want it kept secret that my country gave my grandfather PTSD, who gave my father PTSD, who gave me PTSD? Who benefits from keeping it secret? The therapist. The more secretive and the more information you control, the more nobody knows what's going on. That is the best environment for abuse patterns to continue year after year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation. That is guaranteed income for any therapist for the rest of their lives. Their children and children's children can be therapists. And there will be more trauma and more abuse in 50 years than there is today because there's more people copying the abuse patterns that can't be talked about to protect the abuser. Secrecy protects the abuser, not the victim. Now, there's a little bit of fine edge because the cult is so ignorant about how to support abuse survivors that it can feel horrible to know that your abuse is known and no one's helping you because they don't know how or because they're too sociopathic to try. That can be a painful message. But as we look at the diagnosis of our cult and the problems going on, one of the things we have to look at is the silence, the systematic silence of therapists and healers around these issues. That nobody wants to own responsibility and talk about these things. Now, we're at more than 99% rejection so far. 99% of all therapists contacted are rejecting and responding to this information and this invitation incompetently and suboptimally. Now, how are these people going to teach the rest of us how to have sustainable, loving marriages and heal trauma if they cause shame in silence and lack of engagement and can't show up and address the issues on camera? I don't think they can in that paradigm. And so this is part of refracting the disease and understanding that it permeates not only the general public, not only the culture, but the therapeutic community as well.